Dr. John Blitch from Blitz Solutions. Thank you so much for joining us on Australia in Space TV, and welcome to Western Australia here in Perth for the Indo-Pacific Robotics, Autonomy, AI and Cyber Conference.
Wonderful.
Beautiful.
I'm ecstatic to be here. This is wonderful.
John, you gave an opening plenary this morning, inspiring. Really, you did sort of set the scene for the whole day as well, and we've covered off on your advanced robotics experience, and then followed by sort of remote operations and AI sessions. So you really did bring it all together. How do we encapsulate your experience and maybe some of the takeaways that you're finding here in Western Australia with that experience and the insights you're getting?
Well, I appreciate your very effusive intro there. I would say that my contribution is simply mistakes, right? But mistakes are important for learning. And so making a mistake on a frontier, however, can be ultimately catastrophic. You're risking your life about it. And that's what I love about Perth, is this is a frontier city, not just geographically, because you can have a frontier, as Renee said, with looking at the Milky Way. We can the final frontier in space, but you can have a frontier in a laboratory. You can have a frontier in a hospital, looking for the cure for cancer. And so all of that comes together here. And I love the frontier mentality because, as I mentioned, when you live on the edge, you can't afford to upset everybody that lives near you because they may be taking your appendix out.
Yeah.
So you depend on each other, and it fosters a collaborative and innovative approach because you can't wait for somebody to come from hours, days away. You have to innovate on the spot immediately. So I think it sets it up as such a nice crucible for innovation.
I can only encourage the audience to learn more about the work that you've done, because you've gone from sort of special forces and the application at DARPA in particular, but now you're a lot more into the neurosciences and understanding how the human mind works as well. And I think, as you say, you're linking that frontier, even with your work with animatronics and also the study of animals. Maybe talk us through that kind of research that you've done. Fascinating animal. When we look at the animal species, it's an amazing thing, and we are seeing this in Australia, I beg your pardon, with animatronics, particularly CRASAR robotics. We've just done for a spider aspect, and also an emu, an Australian robotic. Yeah, just some of the work and the science research that you've done in animatronics.
Well, it's not so much research that I've done. When I was at DARPA, my job was to provide the Department of Defense with technological surprise. So I was exploiting research that others had done with an eye towards or an ear towards what can make the military more effective. So I backed into this animatronics in the cephalopod realm with a brilliant team from the Marine Biological Laboratory at Woods Hole, led by Roger Hamlin and his group, Frank Grasso, Tamara Flash, Benny Hogner, all these folks who were exploring, and Bill Keir, who were exploring these magnificent squid and octopi. And that was 20 years ago, 25 years ago. And now with a recent documentary called My Octopus Teacher, we see this coming back around and around and again. And what makes them so fascinating from a neurological standpoint is they offload up to 70% of their processing onto their limb. So if you cut a cephalopod limb off and you directly activate that, it will behave in a phenomenal way. So it doesn't need the central nervous system for a lot of its behavior. It is so unique throughout the animal kingdom that it has given rise to support for the idea of panspermia, that life originated out there and not here, because they're so unique. So I think it's a good metaphor for AI and for what we're all about here, because this distribution of how much do you decentralize and allow the autonomous module to run, like at Rio Tinto, or as we heard this morning, with all this automation with Fugro and offshore work. So a lot of that is independent, running on its own, and the distribution is flipped, right? Because we we use our central nervous system for just about everything.
Yep.
Very little do we, do up. So I like that metaphor.
Do you see it being able to be created? Because I'm thinking edge computing is you can create that edge computing. We are seeing that much more now in space.
Yes.
But in terms of the physical nature of, say, an octopus and the limbs, they were working with liquids and the like. Did you see it being possible to recreate?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think so. So the materials science world, it's not just computing that is improving, but materials.
Yes.
As materials get better and better, and we're getting smaller and smaller chips and so forth, all sorts of the quantum computing and so forth. So all of that is an enabling factor into creating what I call artificial cephalopod limbs that can do this wrapping sort of behavior. So the wrapping is absolutely crucial for rescue operations because if you try to grasp someone's hand to pull them out of the rubble, you will rip that arm off.
Yeah.
But if you wrap around them, right? Look at how we handle a baby. We wrap gently to pull them out of the rubble alive, as opposed to ripping limbs off. I know that sounds very, kind of morose, but when you're in that community and lives are on the line, that's what that takes.
Well, I think, again, back to your experience, 9/11 responder, I think, I can see how your mind's thinking of what would have actually worked or helped during that time. Look, and you're also a Space Hall of Famer. Maybe some of the career highlights that you've had and what's special to you. Sorry to put you on the spot for that one.
As I said, it is nothing but folly after folly, right? But as one of my former commanders wrote, it was on a fake evaluation report. He said, the only reason that troops will follow Captain Blitch into combat is out of sheer curiosity of what he's going to screw up next. So it's valuable, right?
Yeah.
But at least we're trying. At least we're out there pushing that envelope. So if you fail doing something mundane and it doesn't contribute to learning, well, then what's the value of that lesson? But if you're trying to climb Everest with a robot in your backpack that you can use to pull the oxygen bottles down off of that mountain, and something goes awry, all right, well, we're learning a lot in that process. Yeah. So that's the other aspect of this frontierism, right? The edge of exploration. If you fail while you're exploring, well, that's got value. So that's kind of the overall aspect of things. And it actually predates 9/11 to the Oklahoma City bombing.
Okay.
And one of the most heart-wrenching experiences I've ever had, I still get a little PTSD from it, was seeing a woman impaled. I call her the lady in the purple dress, and I talk about that in my book. But that was tragic in the worst way. The happy face was there was another woman who had to have her leg amputated in order to extract her from the rubble. But it was a horrific situation because as the surgeons were about to start the procedure, the building became unstable. And so everybody had to pull out and leave her there for like an hour. And so can you imagine the emotional content? And they had to drag those surgeons out of there. And so that was my inspiration for, hey, is there any way that we could leave a robot with her with a speaker?
Yep.
And so some of the robots that I was involved in developing later, I emphasized they had to have both a microphone and a speaker so that we could interact with the human on the other end. A black and white camera, that's not sufficient.
Yep.
You have to have this interaction. So giving those victims enough contactivity to calm them down, and then if you've got the speaker there, you might be able to bring down some oxygen or water.
Yes.
Hydration is huge. So all of those lessons came out of the Oklahoma City bombing.
Wonderful. And we are having that contribution to emergency services as well. And as you say, it's a life
huge.
changer. And even from WA Police, they're saying they can now start to deliver medicine. And why wait for the regulations? Let's make it happen now. Look, Dr. John Blitch, I've met some special people in my career as well. You're definitely one of them. We'll have the links to your book and your documentaries. But please continue making the contribution to the industry, and we can see the value that you're making here. So thank you very much for joining us.
Well, thank you for your networking here. This is magical and opening everybody's eyes and fostering that innovation. What comes out of this is phenomenal.
Dr. John Blitch, thank you
you.
so much for joining us on Australian
Thank
Space
you,
TV.
sir.
Well done.